The Sechta Horayos Daf Ches Amud Aleph. So we're starting now from the Mishnah on Zayin Amud Beis. Ein Chayam Al Helam Dava. So Zog the Mishnah. You have it. Zayin Amud Beis. Ein Chayam Al Helam Dava im Shigigas Ma'aser. Bezdin won't be chayiv to bring a carbon Helam Par. I mean a Helam Dava. Meaning that business, they made an erroneous psak, a mistake, and the Kol followed their psak. So they're only going to be chayiv if the side the business made a mistake and side the Kol made a mistake. The same thing with a Kohen Gadol. That if he followed his own suit, his ma'aser, but he has to make a psak by mistake, and he himself has to follow his psak. But the loy b'avitz chachamim.
He's also the Dayan has to follow himself.
Yeah. Not by the Kohen Mashiach. By Kohen Mashiach, it's he himself. Only by the Dayan with the call. But the Kohen Gadol is that's
What is Mishnah talking about?
which one? The first case is talking about Bezdin. Only if the Bezdin made a mistake and the Tzibur made a mistake and follow. Shigas Maisa means that the action that the call that Tzibur followed was a shegig also.
Okay.
They follow, and so to a Kohen Mashiach, he passed him. He passed the mistake and he followed. He did his own. He did the Maisa mistake too. The loy
Then he
b'avitz.
brings also
Then he brings a parallel. And so too, by Avitz Gechavim, Ein Bez Chayam Al Helam Davish Im Shigras Maisa. Avitz Gechavim is a category on its own because other Avedas, you only bring a part by other Avedas. Yesterday we were speaking about there's a difference between Bezdin by Shar Mitzvahs. Bezdin, the Kohen HaMashiach is different than a Yachid, and Nasi is different. Why? Bezdin brings a par, if it's a regular mitzvah. Kohen Gadol brings a par too, and a Nasi brings a he-goat, a sa'ir, and the klal, the tzibur, brings se'ira, a female goat. Okay? That's my Shah mitzvahs. When it comes to the Aveda of Aveda Zarah, then Bezdin, in addition to the par, they bring a se'ira. Okay? And the Kohen Gadol does the same. Okay, let's go. But you want to see...
same thing that Nasi will bring.
Right. But that's only by Shah mitzvahs. You see, B'chein B'avitz Gechavim, he doesn't say B'chein Mashiach. By which case did he say B'chein Mashiach? In the first case, by all other Avedas. But when it came to Avitz Gechavim, he doesn't say B'chein Mashiach, and the Gemara will address it soon. Okay. So from where do we know that Bezdin themselves will not bring a par Helam? Only if it was Helam David, that means the Bezdin made a mistake, and Shigigas Maisa, and the Tzibur. Rabbanim you learned. Mima kol adas yisol yishgu. Yishgu means that most of the Bnei Yisrael will make will be a shegeg. Yochel yehi chayavim. I would have thought there'll be a chayiv or kamashigas ma'aser, even if only the tzibur made a shegeg. Had nothing to do with a psak. The tzibur made a shegeg. They all wanted to eat shuman, and somehow it got mixed up for chayla. But it's not talking about Bezdin. How do we know that Bezdin also has to make a mistake? Because Talmud Lema, if you look at that, the pasuk besides Yishgu, it says V'nelam Dova. V'nelam Dova is going on Bezdin. As Bezdin, it was Nelam Yivon, what the real psak is, and they made a mistake. So that they also have to be part of the shegig in order to be chayiv by Helam Dova. And chayav Mela al Helam Dova only if Bezdin made a mistake. Im Shigiras Maisa with the tzibur following suit, or by the Kohen Gadol with him following suit. It says also so to a Kohen Gadol has the same thing as Bezdin by Shah mitzvahs. How do we know that the Kohen Gadol has to make himself a psak first and then follow suit, then his chayv apar? Because by Kohen Gadol it says Ima Kohen HaMashiach Yechda, and then it says Lash Masal. So we're comparing the Kohen Gadol to Tzibur. Harei Mashiach Tzibur. And just like a tzibur, you need both shegeg, so too by Mashiach, the Kohen Gadol has to give a erroneous psak and follow. And yeah. It says, and by worshiping of idols, we say you also need. Oh, it doesn't say B'chei Mashiach. We're soon going to see. But how do we know by Havetz Chacham you need both Tnayim? Maybe Shigas Ma'aser is enough. We don't need Bezdin. By Havetz Chacham we said by Havetz Zara. Why do we have to say that Bezdin is making a mistake and the Tzibur is following? Havetz Chacham is Azah Shvera Aveda. Maybe even with Shigas Ma'aser they have to bring Parvis or. Says you want to know, if you wanted to tell me Rabbanan learned the Braisel. If he sheyotz Havetz Chacham, Havetz Chacham is different than the regular Avedes. Lodem ba'atzmo. It's that it should be considered as its own category. So Yochi Chayom al Shigas Ma'aser L'chud. I would have thought, even if the Tzibur themselves made a mistake, I'm thinking you're allowed to bow down to the Aveda Zara. You remember? And they didn't. Nobody passed him. I would have thought even if they see them made their own mistake without a psak bezdin, and they have to bring a par. Okay, so your mother no. We learn out from Agzei Shava. Never can by Avitzir Cham the Aveda of Avitzir Cham. It says me'ene. What does it say? Me'ene the ha'idon necessarily shgoga. That's talking about the tzibur. But Nemela Halon by Pahalam Davar it says me'ene over there we say goes on the bezdin. So just like Malahalon, just like by Pahalam Davar, it has to be bezdin making a mistake also. Ein chayom ela helam davar. Only if there was a helam davar of bezdin in shigas ma'aser. Akan. So too by the Aveda of Avetz Chachamim, ein chayom ela helam davar. It has to be the Helam Davar Bezdin first, and then the Tzibur doing the same. Yeah, but I wouldn't have known that. Avetz Chacham it's his own category.
Say, I don't need Bezdin.
I wouldn't need Bezdin. Just if the Tzibur made a mistake, thinking, oh, it makes a booking, or you're allowed to hug Aveda Zara, or you can kiss Aveda Zara. They would, they would have made up their own things, or they would have served Aveda Zara. They could be by Perhir. Perhir the derech is to take a dump. To make number 2 in front of the peri. So let's say he didn't serve it that way. It's he booked some peri. There's a is of them. So yeah. Right. Samano Sataveda for the Aveda. Anyway, exactly what Vila Mashiach, Havetz Chachamim, like Katani. But it doesn't say by Havetz Chachamim, V'chein Mashiach. It only says by Shar Avedas. So you could imply by Mashiach, by Aveda Zara, you don't need Mashiach, the Kohen, God will making up psak. The mere fact that he makes a mistake, that's enough. Enough to show him he should pass him for himself. So if you want to ask this money, who's this Mishnah following? That by Kohen Gadol, he gives first he gives a. No, he can make a mistake. He thinks he's eating shuman, and he ate chaylev. He makes a psak chaylev, and he eats the chaylev. Yeah, this is right. So you want to maslis money? Who's the Mishnah following that by Kohen Gadol you don't need both? You don't need the Helam Dava from the Kohen Gadol. Rabbi, it's Rabbi. The Tanya that we learned in the Braisa, Mashiach, B'Havetz Chachamim, Rabbi Yom B'Shigas Ma'aser L'chud. Just all you need is he should make a mistake in the Aveda, not that he should first make a psak in his head. No, he's not chayv. Only the Helam Dava that he has to first make an erroneous psak for himself and then do the Ma'aser. Now he's saying another here. The Shavin, Rabbi and Chachamim, even though they argue by Kohen Gadol if you need Helam Dava or not, but they're in agreement that the Kohen Gadol is Chai B'Seida on Shigas Havetz Chachamim. That he wants us the Chacham are comparing a Kohen Gadol to a Tzibur. That you'll be chayiv taka Helam Dava with Shigas Ma'aser, right? But they made it to Rebbe that it's like a yachid. That what do you bring? A she goat, right? A seira on Shigas Havetz Chachamim. You don't bring a par v'soyer. You don't bring a par and a he goat. They're both in agreement. Rebbe and Chacham are arguing if you need Helam Dava by Aveda Zara by Kohen Gadol, but not. But when it gets to the carbon of Aveda Zara, by the carbon of Aveda Zara, the Chachamim Amoida to Rebbe that you bring like a yochid, se'ira, okay? Shabbos she'ein, a female. Shabbos she'ein ha'koyin Mashiach maybe Hashem Tali. But on the other hand, Rabbi is moed to the Chachamim, it has a din like a tzibur, that it doesn't bring a Hashem Tali, just like a tzibur doesn't bring a Hashem Tali. This is reasonable to say, to be medayik from our Mishnah, because he didn't say the words V'chein Mashiach by Avodas Yechavim. Automatically, it means that Koyam Mashiach by Avodah Zarah you don't need Helam Dava. That's your reasoning. That's your diak. What are you talking about? In the next Mishnah, we're going to learn that Bezdin is not chayiv only on which Aveda that if they made a mistake, only by Aveda Bezdin Karis and V'shigah Chatas. Only if the Aveda would be b'meiz and chayiv Karis and V'shigah Chatas, on such Aveda, if they made a mistake, Bezdin, then they have to bring a Payalam Dava. So that's what the Mishnah says. And the next Mishnah we're going to learn. So it says, did the Mishnah learn the Chen Koyam Mashiach? It didn't say the Chen Koyam Mashiach. It just said that for a Bezdin, the Bezdin won't be Chayv Apayalam Dava only if they made a mistake on Azah Veda that b'meizi Chayv Kadas Mishagi Chayv Achatas. And it doesn't say Mashiach, they're coming back to the same thing. And we know the din is the same. Says the Gemara Elatani Ha. So it's just like this Mishnah. You said it didn't say B'chein Koyin Mashiach, but it meant that it has the same criteria as a Bezdin, that it has to be amazing. It's such a Aveda that's amazing. Kados Ubeshege Chatas. Radin Laha. The same thing is by Koyin Mashiach. Yeah.
So what do you say that? It doesn't have to be near the Chayv Choris? What would you say?
No, we're saying that even though it didn't say the Chen Koyin HaMashiach, it has the same din as a tzibur. That it has to be only when will you be Mechliv Apar Elam Davar? Only if it was b'mezit, he would be Chayim Kodesh. On such a Aveda, b'mezit that is Chayim Kodesh, so just like it included B'chein Mashiach, by that Mishnah, that only on that type of Aveda Yechayim, Hachanami, so too in our Mishnah, when we're talking about Aveda Zarah, even though he didn't say B'chein Mashiach, Taniha, we learn Taka by Bezdin, but we learned in Laha. So too by Koyin HaMashiach, you're only going to be Chayiv if there was Helam Dava. And we're not going to make a separate din for Koyin HaMashiach, even though he didn't say B'chein Koyin HaMashiach.
It has to be both.
Has to be both, yeah. And it means, just like in the next Mishnah, meant to include the Koyin HaMashiach, even though it didn't say B'chein Koyin HaMashiach, by the type of an Aveda that you would be Chayiv Apar Helam Dava. Only if it's Mezid, Kadas, and Meshach Chatas. And we said even though it didn't say Chen Koyin Mashiach, it included it. So by time of the Rebbe, why does the Rebbe stick to his guns? No, since the Mishnah didn't say Koyin HaMashiach, the Chen Koyin Mashiach, by Avodah Zarah, you don't need Helam Dava. What's the reason? So he says, I'm a crowd, because by a Kabni Yochid, that was Oibid Avodah Yechavim, that says, V'chipra HaKoyin al HaNefesh, HaShogeges, Becheta B'shgoga. These are all extra words. HaNefesh, HaShogeges are extras. HaNefesh is Koyin HaMashiach. The pasuk when it says HaNefesh, that's going on Koyin HaMashiach. HaShogeges, that's Zanasi, is going on Anasi. That they too bring a Sida Lechatas V'Avodas Yechavim, just like a hedget. Becheta B'shgoga. What does that mean? So Rabbi says the mashmais is Chet Zeh B'shgoga Yehei. Means that the Chiyuv Korban of Avodas Yechavim is Chayiv just for the Shgoga. Shigagas Maisa. Chet Zeh, that a Koyin Gadol or Koyin Hedget brings, is B'shgoga Zeh. Even if he only was B'shogig in Maisa. Without Helam Dava. Rabbanon Sabri, Mishchatose B'shgoga, it means somebody who's Chayiv, a B'shogig, meaning that he brings a Korban Avodas Yechavim on Shigas Mais Lechud Yotza. So that's by a regular one. It says what's Bechet Mishgoga. How did the Chachamim learn that he's Chayiv on Shigas Mais Lechud only by the cases of Hedjed and Anasi, which there it says V'chipra HaKoyin al HaNefesh HaShogeges is only going on those that are going to be Chayiv on Shigas Mais Lechud. Yotze Mashiach she'ein chatose b'shgog ela b'helam dava. But when it comes to Mashiach, he's only chayiv together with helam dava. We find that by Avodas it says b'feish that it's only not by mitzvah, by other mitzvahs, by other avedas. It says he's only going to be chayiv if there was a helam dava by Mashiach.
So what would I say by the
So he says he learns b'chet b'shgoga on those that are only who is going to be chayiv without helam dava, on who where the sin is b'chet b'shgoga only on by us shar mitzvahs, that person would be chayiv even just on shigigas ma'aseh itself. A kohen mashiach is never going to be chayiv by shar mitzvahs if it was only shigigas ma'aseh. You had to have first helam dava. That's how it is. He's not going to be chayiv. So since and the pasuk says only on somebody who's shaykh to be in the geder of b'chet b'shgoga, only on somebody who's shaykh to be in the category of only doing shigigas ma'aseh with a helam dava, a yachid and a nasi, meaning a hedge and a nasi. Kohen gadol, we know he's never going to be chayiv just for shigigas ma'aseh.
It has to be a helam.
It has to be a helam dava.
Helam means that
He made a psak erroneously. Okay. Bishavin, and then we learned in the Mishnah the se'ido ki yachid. That the Rabbi and the Chacham were made that a kohen gadol, if he made the mistake in avodah zarah, what kind of a korban does he bring? Not like a tzibur. He brings a se'idah, just a she goat, ki yachid, like a yachid. How do we know that he brings the same as a yachid, the kohen gadol? Even though
he made it for himself, he made a mistake.
Yeah.
He's like a yachid then, right?
Yeah, but he made a psak and then he made it right. So
He
how
made
do
a
we?
psak for himself, right?
Yeah, but how do we know that he's going to be chai the same like a yachid? Maybe since we're comparing it to a tzibur, benegay that you need helam dava and also shigigas ma'aseh, maybe he has to bring like a tzibur, right? What makes you say that he brings like a yachid? So if
So
you
he
want
only brings a seed, not a par.
par, correct. By a tzibur it's par, and with neisim to the par you bring a seed. So if you want to be nefesh achas tachta b'shgoga, so it says nefesh achas. Echad yachid, echad nasi, echad nashiyah. Kulam echal nefesh achas. They're all included in the word of nefesh achas. Right?
One did not say any special yichus.
And therefore they all bring the same carbon of cedar. So the Gemara we learned with Shavim in the Baraisa finishes off she'ein maybe Hashem Toli, that the Kohen HaMashiach has a din like a tzibur, that it does not bring the Hashem Toli. In fact, the Gemara, but no, how do we know that it doesn't bring the Hashem Toli? Says the Gemara b'chsiv, it's written by Hashem Toli, v'chip ha'alav ha'kohen al shi'yagasei asher shogag. It's on top of the lashon. It says on his shogeg, which he made a shogeg, right? So anyway, so what do we see from this pasuk? Since it says on top of the lashon, it's coming to tell you, but when it comes to Avodas Yechavim, he's not going to be chayiv on Hashem Toli. I'm saying not just by Avodas Yechavim, that he's not going to be chayiv by Hashem Toli from the top of the lashon.
This is talking about the
Kohen Gadol, the Chipa HaKohen. The pasuk there is talking about the Kohen Gadol. And what lashon does he use? A double lashon. Al shigegasei asher shogag. So that's extra. What is the extra coming to tell you? That you're not going to be chayv Hashem Toli. Rabbi argues. Rabbi says it's not chayv Hashem Toli. Only if somebody, all his chatoyim is going to be chayiv just b'shigas ma'aseh alone, without elam dava. Yatzazeh, excluding a kohen HaMashiach, then he brings Hashem Toli. Yatzazeh, excluding the kohen HaMashiach, shein kol chetay, not, even though he says there's one chet that you don't need helam dava. Which chet did rabbis argue with the chachamim by avodah zarah? But all the other chatayim, he says, b'feidish you don't need helam dava by kohen HaMashiach. But I'm sorry, by Kohen HaMashiach, you always need helam dava, except by Avodas Yechavim. So too, shein kol chet b'shgoga, since all the other averis that he commits, you need that it should be together with helam dava. So therefore, it's excluded. Ela behelam dava. It's only behelam dava. So therefore, it's not going to bring Hashem Toli. You're only bring Hashem Toli if it's such a person that every aveda could be done without helam dava, excluding Kohen HaMashiach. Every aveda has to be behelam dava, except by avedas kechavim. So such a person is excluded from Hashem Toli. That's what he's saying.
In the case, what is Chachamim is everybody doesn't have to have a helam dava?
Only according to Rebbe. Rebbe argues with the Chachamim. The only exception by Kohen Gadol, Rebbe says there is an exception, that you don't need Helam Dava. Only where? What's the exception, Rebbe said? Avodah Zarah. But Chacham argues.
Inside the Tzibur and inside the Kohen Mashiach,
The
doesn't it?
Tzibur always needs Helam Dava. But Kohen HaMashiach always needs Helam Dava. There's only one exception that it doesn't need Helam Dava. By Avodah Kechavim.
Why? Because it's Chomer.
Because the Aveda of Avodah Kechavim is a Chomer one that you don't need both Noyim. But you're making it sound like it has to be that all the Avedas that he does by all the other Avedas has to be B'shigyas Ma'aseh Lachud. And here you're saying no. Here you're saying that you need Helam Nova by Kohen HaMashiach. It doesn't say Kol, but it doesn't say Kol. So it says the Gemara and the Gemara in. Yeah, then came because if you didn't need Kol, if you wouldn't need all the sins to have just Meshigas Maisa alone, Nichlev Al Shigagase. Let the Torah write just Al Shigagase, and that should be enough. What do I need Shagag? If you're saying that all the Chatoim Shigagas Maisa Lachud is enough, so let him just write Al Shigagase. Asher Shagag is extra. Hakamashwan, Hadika Kol Chatam Shgagay. That means only what kind of a person brings the Hashem Tali? Only somebody who he's chayiv even by Shigas Maisa Lachud. Yotza, excluding Mashiach, Shein Kol Chatam Shgagay. Kohen Gadol Shigas Maisa alone is not enough. Ella ba'avetz kechavim. Only by avetz kechavim Shigas Maisa is good. V'lo b'shar mitzvahs, but not by other mitzvahs. Because by other mitzvahs is only Ella b'helam davim Shigas Maisa. By all the other mitzvahs you need both. So therefore it doesn't bring Hashem Toli. Yeah, that's how Rabbi learns the drasha. They say you don't bring Hashem Toli. Where did they learn it out from? So he says, "Mi shechetoi."
So they both hold that you don't need both of them,
Right.
right?
Sure, that they don't bring Hashem Toli, but they, but he learned it out from shechet v'shgaga, and the Rebbe learned it out from Al Shigigas Asher Shagag. So it says, "Mi shechet v'shgaga." What is he going to do with that drasha? That is mechayiv chatos. That was done only on Shigas Maisa itself. Yatza Mashiach, excluding Mashiach. He learns how to bechet mishgaga, not like Rebbe. The Abbanim say that bechet mishgaga means that only on a person whose chet is b'shigas Maisa Lachud, without Helam Dava. That's the person that
Who's that?
Huh?
Who's that?
That no, she'ein chet mishgaga, that a chet cannot be b'shigigas ma'is lachud loy b'lavet zicham loy b'sham mitzvahs. Who's that? That's a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol is not b'avet zicham either. He needs both. He says both conditions.
He needs to be the helam.
You need the helam dava too.
Helam.
So in those you're not chayv achatas helam helam dava in shigigas ma'is. Even by avet zicham the chacham hold you need both. And therefore, not only by Omen, the only by Avetz Kechavim you don't need Helam Dava. By all the other mitzvahs you do that. You make it sound the only should be only Avetz Kechavim you don't need Helam Dava.
Only there you need Helam Dava.
Okay. Sagt the Mishnah in Bezdin Chayavim. Bezdin is not Chayv Akarm Acher Yerim Dava. As Beina Kazv Shivigos Echatas, like we spoke till now. Only such Aveda. Where would Bezdin be mechuyev to bring a par helam dava? Only on such aveda that b'mezi chayv kares and mishayir chayv achatas b'chein hamashiach. And so too, the Kohen Gadol does not bring only on such aveda that b'mezi chayv kares and mishayir chayv achatas. V'loy b'avintzei chavim. Now by avintzei chavim it says, Ad she'yodu al davar she'zdei nekos v'al she'yigosin chatos. And by avintzei chavim also, he says it has to be such a aveda that b'mezid yichayv kares and b'shei yichayv chatos.
Can you just say that for the beginning of the
That was
Mishnah?
not talking about we're in the first
No,
Mishnah,
this Mishnah was said, "Ein bet only the five million."
but that's by Shah mitzvahs.
Ein Mashiach, Eloi b'avei chol,
The previous Mishnah was talking about par helam dava.
What are we talking
This Mishnah is talking about which haveda, on which havedas will Bezdin be mechuyev par.
Okay. V'chein Mashiach.
That's by other mitzvahs.
What's the
Shah
Mashiach?
mitzvahs.
Also
The
has-
Kohen Gadol also,
has
he's
to
not
be-
going to be chayiv a par only if the haveda is a severe one that b'mezi is chayiv
What's the
kares.
next word? Eloi b'avei chol.
Well, like haveda zichavim, he doesn't say that by Bezdin. By Bezdin, if the Bezdin makes a
What does
erroneous
it mean,
one,
Eloi b'avei- What's the Eloi?
Bezdin won't be chayiv a par helam dava only if it's such a haveda in haveda zara that b'mezi chayiv kares and b'shegi chayiv chatas.
But he said that B'shara Beis also. Can we just say that?
By
again?
Sharav, it's Havitz it's its own animal, it's its own gather.
Eloi
It's a
b'avei
much
chol,
more
Ad
severe.
she'al davar she'zdoi nekadus, which was a chadus.
Yes,
So,
because
did he
Havitz
say that also ain't doesn't
that's
chayv?
by Shar Avedas. Havitz is another category of its own.
It has the same din then.
It has the same din, but you have to know that it has the same
Wow,
din.
that's what he said, okay.
But it doesn't say the Chem Mashiach.
Oh, okay.
So you understand? So he's saying, first of all, you have to understand that the
You
amazing.
mentioned already the Chem Mashiach. The Chamal B'Chem Mashiach.
Yeah, but before we mention, not to negate to the severity of the Aveda, before we
Did you
mention
have a Lashon to
in the
listen
Tanoim,
from one place
one
and bring
minute,
it to the other
I want to answer your question first. In the previous Mishnah, you're talking about Benegayah that you need Helam Dava and Shigigas Maisa. This Mishnah is talking about Vasfa Aveda. We're not talking about the two Tanoim. So in the Sefer he's saying, where do you find in Aveda Zara that he won't be Mechayiv Mezid Kares? By Chibuk and Nishuk, there you're not going to be Chayiv. Yeah, or hugging it, that you're going to Mechabik, or you have a Nashik, or the Meraint up Metabezim, you're going to clean up over there, Lefnei HaPasel, or if it's not the derech to serve the idol that way, like we said, these are, you're not going to be Chayiv the Mezid Kares. Zok the Gemara. Minalan. Where do we know that you're only chayv on such a aveda that b'mezi chayv kares and shegigos chatas? So the Gemara, the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa. Rabbi Yemen never kan linyan pala ahelam dava. It says aleha. It says neida chatz asher chato aleha. Never lahalan by isachlis ishtay aroyes. A man cannot marry his wife's sister. It says also aleha. So malahalan just like by aroyes, only just like by aroyes. Only vasva aveda by aroyes is aser. Dava shezdene kares val shigigasi chatas. We know by aroyes it says Allah. The Gemara is asking, from where do we know, Rabbi Levi? The Gemara is asking now, from where do we know that it has to be such a aveda? So the Gemara brought a zera shava from Allah. Shteit Allah by aveda zara and says Allah by aroyes. Just like by aroyes, it has to be such an aveda that you chayv b'mezid kares. So too, when it comes to Aveda Zara, it has to be such a severe Aveda that b'mezid your chayv kares and b'shegeg chatas. Look, you want to ask b'tzibur. You found taka mezid's kares. Kares. He gets it, but min hashamayim. Misa b'dei shamayim. Mashiach v'nolam. Till now, you only brought me a gzei shava for a tzibur. Where do we know Mashiach? You know Mashiach? Lash Masam, Mashiach Kitzibur. When they ask the words Lash Masam, we know Mashiach is a din like a tzibur. No,
It has to be what?
that has to be Bebezid Karez V'Shegei Chatas. Nasi, Nasi we know brings different than a Yachid. Nasi brings a he goat, and the regular tzibur brings a she goat. By other Avedas, as you want to yell of mitzvahs, Ksibur Gabi Nasi. It says so we call mitzvahs Hashem. Uksib betzibur has been called mitzvahs. It says also mitzvahs. So ma tzibur bedom shechayim nozdei yikanis as you guys say chatzaf nasi dom shechayim yikanis you guys say chatzaf. That's how we know. Yachid, we know Yachid is only chayv and only on such a aveda that b'mezid Yechayiv Kares and B'Shegir Achatas. That's where he brings the Seira. So how do you know? I'm a krab im nefesh achas tachta b'shgaga. The Yilmud hatachtan, we learn the tachtan where it says im nefesh achas by which deals with a yachid, me'in ha'elyon which deals with a nasi. Im nefesh achas nefesh, a nasi is included in nefesh also. And just like by a nasi we just learned, it has to be an aveda that b'meiz yichayv kares b'shegir chatas. So to yachid. We learned in the Mishnah by aveda zara doesn't not chayiv until there'll be mata such aveda that b'meiz is kares and b'shegir chatas. How do you know by the aveda of aveda chacham? How do you know the meza has to be a kares dika mezid? And not like we brought chibuk nishuk maybe there also. So you wanted to tell me about since avidus kechavim, it's its own category. It's a very strong sin, right? So since avidus is such a severe sin, I would say even if the maze is not a kares, I feel it's gebuk to the makulis. Makulis is mebuk sich nicht. What's done by the makulis? Mevav steiner. Or by the parade, machten jeder Meister. Aber it's gebuk to them. So either not kares. How do we know that maybe over there you're also going to be chayiv? A par says you want to malal dav shals doing because just like by par helam dava, it says dafke what kind of aveda does a par helam dava by other avedas have to be only aveda that's doing because of shigasik hatzaf kan by aveda zara dav shel chayavim as doing because of shigasik hatas. So you want to ask tzibur. You brought me now a perfect zera shavar for tzibur. How about Yochid, Nasi, Mashiach, Manolan? How do we know that they bring their kabbanis only if it's amazing kares v'shei chatas? Amakra. It says in the passage in nefesh achas. So and nefesh achas is echad Yochid, echad Nasi, echad Mashiach. Kulam echal nefesh achas. They include nefesh achas. The yilmud hatachten, and we learn the pasuk of im nefesh achas, which is talking about Yochid, Nasi, and Kohen HaMashiach. Min ha'elyon. From the pasha before it, the im, it says the im nefesh in the pasha before that there it's talking about achatas hakol, and just like achatas tzibur has to be only an aveda that b'mezid is kares and meshei chatas, so too by yachid has to be mezid chayat mezid kares and meshei chatas. This makes sense that we learn. Like Rabbi Allah as a Gzeira Shava. That what was the Allah? It says Allah by Par Helam Dava, and it says Allah by Horayos. And we learn out from Horayos that the Haveda has to be Azar Shtak Haveda says doing a Kodesh. Kidamaran, like we said before, El Rabbanim the Mafkid La Horayos Utzaris. But he's learning different. The Rabbanim learn out from Allah that there's a din of Yibum. What's the din of Yibum? That if the brother, if a man dies without children, so then the brother has to marry that woman in order to keep the name of his brother. So what happens? What's if a brother married his niece? Reuben and Shimon seinen Brüder. Reuben hat Chas gehabt for Shimon's Tochter, and then Reuben died. So Shimon now has to marry his daughter. No, we learn out from Allah that he doesn't marry his daughter. So he's using Allah for something else. How does he learn out for such a sphere Aveda? We can't learn it out from Allah because he learned that Allah he cannot marry a niece. If you want to knock so the Chacham will learn it out with the Master Levi, Rabbi Yeshua and Levi Librei. From this, that Rabbi Yeshua and Levi taught his son, it says Torah Achas Yilachem La'isa B'Shgaga. It says the word Torah Achas, and for all, it's one thing for all Avedas. It says V'Hanav Shashem, which Aveda V'Hanav Shashem Tas B'Yod Rama. It has to be Aveda of Kares. So, which Aveda are we talking about? That the whole Torah is mukish by Avedas, nish by mitzvahs. We know, by tefillin, Mailani Alechem, as if it by tzitzis. Here we're talking about an Aveda. How do we know if he does an Aveda, Fakert, that it's like he was over on the Kol HaTorah Kula? So it says, Hush Kol HaTorah Kula Havetz Gecham. Because somebody who's a Kaifa in the Eivish days, a Kaifa Aveda Zed is Kaifa Kol HaTorah Kula. So Ma Havetz Gecham Shachayom Ma'azdei Nekes Vashik Yosef Chatas. Just like when it comes to Aveda Zed, it says, but Fedish, in the Pasik, such a Aveda which is similar to Kol HaTorah Kula, it says V'nichrisa there in that Pasik. So you know you're talking about the Aveda of Kaddish, of what type of Aveda? Of Aveda Zara. Avkan, so too, B'chol HaTorah, which is compared to Aveda Zara. If somebody is capable of Hashem, by serving Aveda Zara, is capable of Kol HaTorah Kula, is only on what Shechayim HaZden comes Vashik Yosef Chatas. We learn out for the rest of the Torah, all the Avedas that one is going to be Chayiv, is only if it's B'mezid, Kaddish, and B'shegig Chatas. So Gemara Ashkan Yochid Nasi Mashiach. So you found Taka Yochid Nasi Mashiach that you Chayiv Chatas only if B'mezid is Kaddish. Beim Aved Zicham, Beim Mishra Mitzvahs, Sai Beim Aved Zicham, and by Ashra Mitzvahs. Tzibur Menolan, where do we learn our pasuk of Tzibur? If the Tzibur makes a mistake, Gemara Yolov Elyon. No, maybe a Tzibur, even if it's not so, it's Doinei Kaddish. It's a ganze Tzibur, even though a small Avedas, the whole Tzibur made a Aveda. And we go to Yolov Elyon Tachton. We learned the Elyon from the Tachton. What's the Elyon? That's by Chatzakol on the Aveda of Avitz Yechavim. We learn now from the Pasha Shalamata by Chatzayochid of Shigas Avitz Yechavim. Just like by Chatzayochid, we learned that he's only on what Aveda, the Mezid Kaddish B'Shegeg Chatas. We learn now Chatas Tzibur from the Chatas Yochid, that only on Aveda which B'Mezid Kaddish and B'Shegeg Chatas. Rabbi that dashins that a Chatas is even on something from the Gzeir Shabbat of Allah. How do Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi of Torah Achas by Avad Levi? What is he going to do with Torah Achas? If Chachamim learn it out from Torah Achas, why didn't he learn it out from Torah Achas? Torah Achas means Avedis Chachamim is for Allah Avedas, similar that it's only on Aveda which is B'Mezid Kaddish Shegeg Chatas. He says Torah Achas was a different drasha according to that. Mavin learned in the Tanya. He learned out like we learned in the Vaisla. Fisher Matzin Shechal Gakas Ben Rabbim the Yechidim Rabbim B'Sayv Mamayim Avad Yechidim B'Skilo Mamayim Palad. When it comes to Ir Anadachas is most of the city of Yedin Tavei Zara. What do? We kill them all b'cherem, and we take all the spoils, all the Famegim Fabrentas. By a Yachid, no, a Yachid. What is the din? That you give him skila, harsher punishment. And the mamain we don't burn. The mamain we leave for them.
Who used the mamain?
No, it goes to their inheritors. Yeah, Yochel Nachman become Yisrael. Say, I would have thought. So the kabbanis have to be different also. Talmud later comes the pasuk and says, the covenant is going to be the same. So you want to mask have chilkia, the whole reason why they bring the same carbon as a yachid, or the same punishment, is only because the Torah wasn't, the same carbon, only because the Torah wasn't mechalik in their kabbanis. Ha-chalak, then I would have thought that you should make a different type of a carbon. Frank, what are you talking about, a different type of a carbon? My nicey. What was the Hava Amina that if the Torah would have been mechalik, they would have brought a different carbon? What's our carbon? The tzibur, by Iran and Nachas, the tzibur, yes. Says the Gemara, what different carbon would the tzibur, the Iran and Nachas bring? My nicey par. He says tzibur b'shah mitzvah, the maisi, tzibur by other avedas, they also bring a par. You have a basket of karbanis, different karbanis. But you have to show me something different. What's going to be different? Nicey par le'oila v'sori le'chatos, or you're going to add a sori for the chatos. Says you want to tzibur b'avedas chacham the maisi. They bring that too. It's not a new carbon.
It's the same carbon.
No, it's the same. Nicey sori. They should bring a sori. He goes nasi b'sham mitzvahs with the maisi. A nasi by other mitzvahs he brings a he goat. Nicey seed. He should bring a she goat. Yachnami ani kabana. So what was the halamina? I need it. I would have reversed. Normally, what did they bring a par for Oila? This time, By Yeredas, the power will go for Chatas.
So we can essen, they can essen with
No,
sex.
but he's just saying you'll switch it around. That's all. The same thing. And it will be for Ayla. Inami or Tzaddik, you have to bring a different carbon, and there is no other carbonas. So I'll say they like takana. Yeredach's hot nish b'shegi carbon, because we don't. It has to be a different carbon, and there's no such a different carbon, so he wouldn't bring at all. Mashmalan, he comes to teach us that he does. So you wanted to call him Mrs. The mihas kiksi b'hanikroim avitzichavol diksibe. My mashma, how do you know these psukim we're talking about avitzichavol? The psukim that are mechayiv the tzibur on dafke b'mezid kares. How do you know it's talking about avitzichavol? Amarav eat him and Avishum and Levi. The other say it was kti the Tamachav called kni. Amakar says in the pasuk, "Chisishgu loisasu es kol hamitzayla." It says if they will be a shoyig and they will not do all these mitzvahs. So you're talking about mitzvahs that are shekula to all the other mitzvahs. Eizeu mitzvah sheyishkulu chol mitzvahs. Which mitzvahs compared to all the other mitzvahs? That's the only type of a mitzvah that's compared to kol kula. It says in the pasuk Asher Diba Hashem al Moshe that the Heibush spoke to Moshe. So, Eizer he mitzvah shehi diburu shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu. You're saying that the Yidden heard the Dibrei of Moshe itself. Which Dibra was the tzibur that the Yidden heard? The tzibur Yidei Moshe, and it was commanded to Moshe. How do we know? The Tanah of Rabbi Yishmael. Which two Dibris the Yidden heard and say, "Oh, it's Shofil." Whereas Anoichi, Hashem Elokecha v'lo yidilcha al-kivakayim. Maybe Hagvurish Manum, they heard it from the Eivishter. So that's what's compared to. That's how we know we're talking about the Avida of Avitzkecham. The Rabbi Yishmael Tana, the Yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael learned that Min Hayoim Asher Tzvi Hashem v'Holo L'Deirasechem from this day and on. This day meaning from the first mitzvah that the Eibishter gave and on. So Eizeu mitzvah she'in namid, which is the first mitzvah? Is the two psukkah and the Hashem lakach v'layilachah. Like one of the Mas as a mitzvah Nitzav Yisrael. There were 10 mitzvahs Sebe Mara, which was before Har Sinai. So he says it. So you see that's before. So how can you say that's the first mitzvah? We're going to stick to the first two answers. Either because Hashem, we're talking about mitzvahs that the Eibishter, that the Yidden only heard, or we said that Rabbi Shimon Levi said that it says is called mitzvah. What's a mitzvah that's shekula and kol mitzvahs? Only Avidah Sada. Sagt die Mishnah, ein Besen chai auf dem Korben, Besen nach chai va Korben, Allah sebe am mitzvah is asesh b'migdash. Besen will not be mechuyev to bring a par helam if they were matter the tzibur to enter into the Beis HaMikdash while they're tamei. And through that they were matter for to be able to loisas. It says v'lo yitama es machanei masher ani sheichen noisam. Or they were matter for them to eat kachim while they're tmeim. And be able to law that the Torah asks again v'lo yitama es machneiam. That's a loisasei. Now the asay is if they were matter for them to remain in the Mikdash. And when did they become tummy? Only after they entered the Beis HaMikdash. So this is how they were even the mitzvah say. It says when they become tummy, it says v'shalchum in hamachna kol tzara v'chol zav v'chol tamil nefesh, which is asay. So even though a yach that was on these mitzvahs, the leis asay or the asay b'mezid, he would be chayv kares and b'shegeg carbon. Bezdin would be potter. When they made a mistake and they were matter the tzibur to either while they were coming already from before to enter the Beis HaMikdash or eat kachim, because a yachid that's over on Tumas Mikdash U'Kedash b'shegev, he's not chayiv a chatas kavua. He's only chayiv a carbon oil. It's not a set animal for a carbon. If you're wealthy, you bring a bigger carbon. And if you're poor, you can bring even the ifis, and even more poor, you can even bring a minchas chayta, according to the amount he has. So, and on that, Bezdin would not bring a parhelam dava. Bezdin is chayiv a parhelam dava only if it's a chatas kavua, only if it's a fixed chatas. Now we're going to talk about Yechidim. This till now we're talking about Bezdin. And Asham Tali is not brought on a chatas, which is not kavua to a specific animal, just it goes according to his wealth. And if he's wealthier, he brings a bigger animal, and if he's less wealthy, he can even bring Eifis, or even less, a mincha. So on that, even Yechidim don't bring a Asham Tali. They do bring a carbon, versus Bezdin doesn't even bring a par, if it's not a chatas kavua. But Yechidim don't bring Asham Tali. But by a nida, if they made a erroneous psak, they're going to be chayv apar if they made a mistake in the heira. Meaning that they say samach leveset, they say that you don't have to be peidish, and that's the mistake that they made, and then she became a nida in the middle. So the halacha is it's a ashum, it's a chatas kavua, and on that mavim. Since we're dealing with a chatas kavua, mavim ashum talei al asei v'alois hasei shebenida, because it's a chatas kavua, and a chatas kavua Bezdin will be chayiv apart for the erroneous psak. Yechidim will be chayiv ashum talei because it's a chatas kavua. Eze he mitzvah hasei shebenida. What's the mitzvah say from the nida? So he says preish min nida, like it says in the pasuk. He's zartum as no yisol mitumasam, that you have to stay away from the tumah, even before the tumah on her vesset when she normally sees blood. You have to stay away from. Why did he chap on nida? Because nida is most similar, says Ashi, to mikdash v'kadasha. Because by mikdash v'kadasha, if he became tamei in the Beis Hamikdash, then he can get away with it by taking a shortcut. And the same thing is when it comes to a nida, that if when he started to live with her, she wasn't tamei. In the middle, she screams she's tamei. So then the halacha is he's not allowed to go out. The arucha uktsara, the short way or the long way, is saif by mikdash ukdasha and by nida. By Mikdash Udasha, he has to take the short way. By Nida, he has to stay till the Eva dies out. And to make it faster, he sticks his fingers into the ground. That's how it's similar to the Aruch Tzara that we find by Mikdash Udasha, is found by Nida. Mitzvah loisase, where's the mitzvah of loisase by Nida? Al Tave, al Nida, it says, well, Isha, but needs to muscle, you shouldn't come close to Isha Nida. So from where do we learn out? The tzibur is chayv carbon be'oma. That a tzibur is not chayv on any carbon, only on something that is a chatas kavua. And how do we know b'yachad asham tali namelei that a yachad by asham tali does not bring asham tali unless it's a chatas kavua? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi Nama, it says in the pasuk Hashem by a chatas kavua, and it says ubasham tali v'nam b'Hashemu b'tzibur. And we learn now with the Kseidah Shabbat, Ma Hashem, just like the Hashem that says by a Yochid, is Bechatas Kavur, is talking about only a fixed chatos, a fixed animal, a fixed carbon, Afa Hashem, that says B'tzibur, by the Pai Halam Dava, is Dafke by Bechatas Kavur, only if it's a Chatas Kavur. Uma Tzibur Bechatas Kavur, and just like a Tzibur is Chatas Kavur, Af Hashem Tali Nami, Einba El Al Safi Chatas Kavur. So to Hashem Tali is only brought on a chatas kavua. In fact, if you're learning out from Asham, even by not a chatas kavua, by a it says so let us learn out what it says Shabbat from the word Asham that's written by to the Asham that's written by Asham Tali, that you can bring Asham Tali even by a carbon which is idly yated. And the Gemara done in Ashmi Ashemo. We can learn out Ashem from Ashemo. That's said by Atzibur. Ashem Tali from Atzibur. But we don't learn out Ashem by says which is said by a Yachid from Min Yesham, which is written by a couple of Yedid. It's not the same word. Who cares if it's not the same word? Well, turn the way because how's the same word? The first three letters are Ashem and Shemo are the same letters, just at the end is a Vav. Yesham, right at the beginning of the word, it's different. That's why you can't learn it out. But you want to find out, what's the difference if they're not exact the same word? We learned in the base Medrash of Rabbi Yishmael, one pasuk when the Kohen coming to see the house that has a tzaras in one of the walls in order to paskin, so he closes the door by the first week, and the Shavak Kohen, the Kohen comes back, and if it's spread, the halacha is that you have to take out those rocks and the cement around it. You have to be makal. Then it says a Kohen, which is another bia, which at the second week, where there the Torah doesn't explicitly state what should the halacha be if at the second week he saw that it spread. So we learn out the pasuk. We learn out shav from bia. Bia from shav. That just like by Shiva, when the first time the Kohen came back, if it spreads, he would have to take out the stones of the tzaras. So too, by the second week, where it says Bia, you would also have to. Even though Shiva or Bia, it's two separate words. Right? And even if you say you're not dashning, they say the Shabbat from Yesham to Ashem, it says for Ashem by Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashov, which is Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashov is also a Kabbalah Eloviyadet, to the Ashem, which is written by Hashem Tali. They say Hashem Tali is brought even by Mikdash V'Kadashov, which is Eloviyadet, which is not a Chatas Kavua. The Chsiv, like it says in the Pasha, or in the Pasuk, by Kabbalah Eloviyadet, on Shigas Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashov, it says V'hu Tamei V'Ashem. It says V'Ashem. Amar Papa Dan V'Ashem U'Mitzvah Hashem. It's not just from the word Hashem, you also have Mitzvah Hashem, which is written by Hashem Toloi. It says V'Asa'achas Mikol Mitzvah Hashem, and it says the word V'Ashem. Hashem says V'Ashem. Mim V'Ashem U'Mitzvah Hashem. That's written by Par Helam David Tzibur. It says Mitzvah Hashem V'Ashemu. And you don't learn out Hashem Tali from Mikdash V'Kadashov. Because there it's only the word Hashem. Here it doesn't say Mitzvah Hashem by Eilav V'Yodet. Amalei Avsimi by Hashem, Papa V'Neilev, we could still learn out V'Hashem Unasiyas Avein. You have the word Nas Avein by Hashem Tali, Mim V'Hashem Unasiyas Avein, which is written by Kabbalah V'Yodet. It says Im Lo Yag V'Nas Avein. And it says V'Hashem Lachas Meilad. So you have from those two. Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, you need three. You need Sai Hashem, Sai Mitzvahs, and Sai Asher Lo Yisrael. Then that's which is written by Hashem Tali from Miva Hashem, Mitzvah Hashem, Asher Lo Yisrael. That's written by Par Helam Dava. It also says Mitzvah Hashem, Asher Lo Yisrael, and Ba'Hashemu. Those three, which are all which not all three words are written by those cases which is a Kabbalah. That's why we don't learn out Hashem Tali from Kabbalah that it's brought up by a Kabbalah. Only which one has all three? Only the Halam Par. And Hashem Tali has all three, the words of Mitzvah Hashem, and Hashem, and Asher Lo Yisrael.